Morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us this morning. I'm Jormel. I work as an advisor within the Office of Career Strategy, and I work specifically with the Common Good and Creative Careers team, the CGCC. We're a team that is here to help support you as you pursue careers that make a difference and utilize your creativity. And this includes areas such as nonprofits, education, media and communications, as well as government. We are very happy and pleased to host and welcome representatives from the Partnership of Public Service today. We have a full day of programming, which includes this morning that will talk about USAJOBS and the federal job search from 10:30 to 11:30. Then we'll also have our small group chats that will take place in the common room upstairs between 1 o'clock and about 2:40. And then this afternoon between 3 and 4, we'll have a presentation with regards to the federal resume. So without further ado, I'm happy to turn it over to Ann Straith and Logan Cole of the Partnership for Public Service. Please help me welcome them.
Thank you so much for having us. We're really happy to be here. We're going to be going over, as Jamal said, USAJOBS, how to navigate that federal hiring process. My name is Ann Straith. I'm an associate at the Partnership for Public Service on the federal workforce team, and I'd like to introduce my colleague, Logan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Logan Cole. I manage programs on our workforce team at the Partnership for Public Service. Primarily, I do work that thinks about how to get young folks into government and really to think differently about, how can we best equip the next generation to take on public service careers and use those careers to create change and serve the country. So again, here's a highlight of an overview of our agenda. I know there's a sign-in sheet going around, so we've already collected some of your information. And what we can do is, with that, send out any of the tools and resources we've provided here this morning. We can send that out to you following the presentation. But today we'll talk more about who we are as the Partnership for Public Service, the federal government at a glance, the ins and outs of the federal hiring process, as well as some resources that you can use as you think about taking your next steps in your career and job search. And a little bit more about us. So we're the Partnership for Public Service, and we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. Our whole mission is to build a better government and a stronger democracy. And in our organization, we look to accomplish that in several ways. But one of the ways we do that is thinking about the federal workforce. And that's the team that Ann and I are on. And we do a lot of work to engage folks on campuses across the country, whether that's working with students and faculty, and having additional conversations about what it looks like to recruit and retain young talent in government. And so all of you are here likely because you're interested in public service or you're interested in having a career that makes a difference. So as we go throughout our presentation this morning, I encourage you all to think about what motivates you. What's your call to service? What's something that gets you excited? What careers excite you? What impact do you want to make? Think about that as it relates to federal careers, because likely the impact you want to make and the change you want to create, you can do through a career in government. So I encourage you to think about that as we go through this morning's presentation. And as we go through, if you have questions at any point, please feel free to just shout them out, raise your hand. We can keep this informal. This is ultimately meant to be a resource for you all, so please feel free to ask any questions you have. Now I'll turn it back over to Ann to talk more about the federal government at a glance.
Thank you. So one misconception that we often hear on the road as we've been going through our public service roadshow is that students often think that if you want to work for the federal government, you have to be located in DC. Well, I am happy to tell you that that's not true. You can be a federal employee from anywhere in the country, and in fact, 85% of federal employees are outside of the Washington, D.C. area. So if that's something that interests you, but you maybe don't want to move all the way down to Washington, D.C., there's an option for you anywhere in the country. Alongside that, there are 2.1 million federal civilian employees, with 7% of them being under the age of 30. Why that's important is because you guys are in a really great space to be launching your federal careers, because we have a large gap that's going to be forming as 30% of the federal employees that are currently in government are eligible to retire in the next 5 years, and that survey was actually done in 2020, so we are very quickly approaching that 5-year timeline. So there's going to be a lot more opportunities opening up in government, so you guys are a really great space. So as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, there are opportunities across the country. This map is just a snapshot of what those opportunities look like in various states. We've pulled information from Connecticut specifically. I know many students may be from the Connecticut area, but they also might be from a wide variety of places outside of Connecticut. But we did want to pull this data in case that's something that you found interesting. In the state of Connecticut, we have over 8,000 federal employees, highly concentrated in areas of the Department of Defense. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to careers in federal government. We're going to be talking about perks, benefits, what that general schedule looks like. As we jump into that, you may be interested to know that you're not the only ones that are interested in federal work. We're in a very good spot with young people who are interested in federal government, so you're definitely in the right place. Something that surprised me was when Axios earlier this year did a survey of Gen Z to find where they were interested in working. And of course, as might be expected, a lot of those big tech companies made the top of this list. But what was surprising is that the federal government did as well. Something you might notice is that NASA is also on this list. Although it is technically part of the federal government, I think that speaks to the strong branding that NASA has as an agency. So I kind of like to think of this as an 8.1% for federal government, but just a little snapshot of what your peers may be finding their interests in. So I'm going to turn it over to Logan to talk about the perks and benefits of federal work and how you can make your impact.
So I've already mentioned this a couple times, but I think a constant theme you'll hear throughout the presentation is if you want to consider a career that makes a difference and that has an impact, the federal government is a great career to consider. That's perhaps one of the biggest benefits of a federal career is the change you can make, the people you can serve, and the challenging and complex issues you get to be a part of solving. But in addition to that, there's a lot of other things to consider with federal careers, such as great benefits. The federal government has one of the most strongest overall compensation packages when you think about healthcare, retirement benefits, flexible working arrangements, as well as other perks like sick leave. Working in a federal career, you have a high level of responsibility. So if you crave leadership opportunities or a sense of responsibility, a federal career can be a great option for you. By nature of being committed to serving the public, there's a lot of responsibility that goes into how you steward the resources in your job and how you work in your role, because you're ultimately serving the country and serving folks living in the U.S. But beyond that, the federal government values young folks and they provide them with leadership opportunities early. So if you're interested in taking significant ownership of projects, leading discussions, meetings, and really working on real issues, a federal career can be a great place for that. Last but not least, training and development is a priority of the federal government. They want their employees to continue to grow and be the best at what they do. So whether that's achieving additional advanced education, attending conferences or professional industry events, or even achieving different certifications that'll help you be stronger at your job, the federal government provides these opportunities to employees and will often pay for them. There's also opportunities in all fields. So I'm not sure of the spread of majors in this room, but the federal government needs a workforce that has all skill sets. So whether that your background is in engineering, technology, political science, government, communications, business, the federal government needs it all. So no matter what major you have or what interest you have, there's likely a career for you at a federal agency. And last but not least, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility has been a significant priority of the federal government, and since 2021, over 90 agencies have released what's called equity action plans, which are thinking more strategically about the culture they're building within their agency and the services they provide, as well as thinking about the impact they're having on the public. And so one example that comes to mind is at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. There was a huge research initiative done to help uncover findings that would, again, lead to the elimination of bias in the home appraisal process. And that's something that the Department of Housing and Urban Development is doing, but many other agencies are also making that same commitment to inclusion and accessibility when it comes to the policy and services they provide. And so now I'll transition the conversation to think more about, where might you begin your career in government? Because oftentimes government uses different language, terms, and things that can be confusing to job seekers. So over these next few slides, I want to just clarify some things so that way as we transition into talking more about USA Jobs and how to find those opportunities, what to look for. The general schedule is the pay scale as well as the placement scale for job seekers in government. And you can see that it's organized by education level. So you might see a position on USA Jobs. If you've completed a bachelor's degree, you might be looking for opportunities that say GS7. And so that lets you know that that's an entry-level opportunity. GS9 is for those with master's degrees, and GS11 is for those with a doctoral degree. Now, what I'll say is that's just where you start out. So, for example, maybe you've been in the workforce for a while, and you choose to earn a master's degree, and then after that, re-enter the workforce. You may come in higher than a GS9. This is just the foundational level, and I think is particularly helpful when transitioning out of your undergraduate studies into the workforce. You'll likely start somewhere between that GS7 and GS9 level. However, there's a lot of promotion potential in government, and so each year you're up for the opportunity to advance and promote. So just because you start there doesn't mean you'll be there for long. And so here's a snapshot of pay and benefits across government, and this just has those first handful of career levels. I'd primarily look between those GS7 and GS11 bands. Often what we hear is that pay is lower in the federal government than other sectors, and that can be true. But like I said, the promotion potential, you continue to advance each year, and each year you do receive that salary increase. So you might be starting lower than other industries, but there is that opportunity to continue, and there's consistency in that and transparency in that of what your salary will be and how that will progress over the next few years. But for example, you do take a significant jump between a GS7 and a GS11, and that really in the workforce is likely a difference of 2 to 2.5 years. So you can go in Washington, D.C., for example, from about 53,000 up to 78,000 in just about 2.5 years. There's a lot of other benefits to federal employment as well, and the retirement packages and the healthcare benefits. So this is just looking at take-home pay, but something helpful to consider as you think about careers in the government. And so here is the federal hiring timeline, and we'll walk through this as sort of a lead up to what to expect on USA Jobs. So you'll apply with your application. You'll then, once you apply, you'll then be referred to a real person, a hiring manager in the federal government, who will manually review your application. It then goes over to someone, a selecting official, who will make selections to determine, which candidates they'd like to interview. Interviews take place, and then you'll receive the job offer. The federal government follows this process at every single agency, but one thing that I like to make job seekers aware of is it does take some time. So I would for most jobs, excluding those in the national security field, you can expect somewhere between 2 to 3 months between the time that you apply and getting to that interview. So it does take some time, and that's because of the manual review. And again, when the federal government reviews applications, they establish an equitable process for that through what's called the competitive service, which is what many of the civil service positions in government are classified as. So this is just a snapshot of the timeline as we move through our time together. And so here's usajobs.gov. Just by a quick show of hands, how many of you are familiar with USA Jobs? Okay, a handful of folks. Now, how many of you already have a profile? Great. So for those who don't have a profile, if you're interested, even in the slightest bit of a federal career, go ahead and make a profile on USA Jobs. It's free, it's easy to do, and if you choose to apply to a federal job, it'll help save you time in the job search process and in the application process. But USA Jobs is where you're going to find the majority of civil service positions across government. And so we'll talk about some tools to make it easier to find the opportunities that make the most sense for you. Perhaps the most important thing you can do when looking for jobs on USA Jobs is narrowing your search. There are thousands of opportunities available on the platform, and so any way you can narrow down your search to align with your goals and interests is going to be to your advantage. I would recommend step one, using filters. So when you go to the USA Jobs homepage, there's a variety of filters available. I think those that are most helpful to folks in this room would be the students and recent graduates filter, but there's many other filters available based on your identity, and you can select, what makes the most sense for you and use those to, again, narrow down your search and ensure you're finding the right opportunities. But as any good job seeker, you should definitely review those results. Pay particular attention to that GS scale. Again, you're primarily going to be looking at positions that are that GS7, GS9 level. And so when you're reviewing those results, look for that. Look for where that job is located, what agency it's at. That's what you're going to find on that initial reviewing results page. But the most important piece is to review the job announcement. And the reason you want to do that is because that's where you'll actually find the summary of the job. What does this position actually do? What goes on? What are the expectations? Where is it located? What comes with employment there? This is the most important part of the job posting. Review that job announcement because federal jobs do not have the best names. They do not do a great job of coming up with cool titles. Instead, you'll want to review that job announcement to ensure it's something that you're actually excited about, or if it's something that doesn't excite you at all, to move on and not spend your time there. But just to recap, use filters, review those results, and then review that job announcement. And that's going to help you when you get over to submitting your federal resume, so that way you can tailor your resume to the job you're looking for. And so here's just a little bit more about the filters here on screen, but I'm actually going to transition the conversation back over to Anne to share more about different filters and hiring authorities for job seekers.
So as Logan mentioned, USAJOBS has a variety of filters that you can use to narrow down that job search. We're going to be talking about some specific hiring authorities that these filters are applicable to, that may be relevant to you in your job search, that are going to help in that application process. So as Logan mentioned, the one that's probably the most relevant to all of you is that student and recent graduates filter. What this does is it filters specifically to opportunities that are open to students, open to recent graduates, and what you'll find in a lot of these opportunities is that they will reference the Pathways program. How many of you have heard of or are familiar with the Pathways program? Okay, great. So for those who don't know, the Pathways program is the premier way of launching a career into the federal government through a paid internship opportunity. There are two types of Pathways programs generally. There's going to be those that are referred to as not to exceed, which is kind of your typical internship that can last anywhere from like 3 months to a year, but it's not going to continue on past that point. The Pathways program that people tend to get the most excited about are the ones that will allow you to be converted to a federal employee. So whenever you start your internship through your educational experience, you will continue working for that agency up to the time that you graduate, and then given that your work quality is sufficient and the agency would like to convert you, you have that opportunity to become a full-time federal employee. So that's really a great way to get your foot in the door with an agency and find that full-time job post-graduation. And you'll find those opportunities through that student filter. Pathways also has a program for recent graduates, and you can use that recent graduates filter as well to find those opportunities, and that's a one-year training program with an agency that allows for conversion if the agency has that availability. So when we say recent graduates, what do we mean? With the federal government, recent graduates is applicable to 2 years post-graduation. So that applies to both Pathways, but also the PMF program, which is the Presidential Management Fellows program. That's specifically for advanced degree graduates. You can apply to recent graduate opportunities up to 2 years following your graduation. If you're a veteran and you need to defer that application because of service, it can go up to 6 years post-graduation. So if you'd like some additional resources on the Pathways program, we do have some GoGovernment resources at this QR code. If you've signed in, we'll be sending a follow-up email that will include all of these links. So we will move on here. All right, actually, we'll go back for just a second. I want to touch on this point. As you're looking through USAJOBS, it won't necessarily say Pathways program specifically in the job title. As Logan mentioned, job titles in USAJOBS can be a little tricky to navigate. One thing that you will often see is the use of the word trainee, and oftentimes that does refer to those student positions, those Pathways programs. You'll see student trainee or budget analyst trainee. That's the language that they tend to use the most. Okay. And so for those individuals with disabilities, there are specific hiring programs through the federal government that can help in your job search. So both the Workforce Recruitment Program, which is a partnership by the Department of Labor and the Department of Defense, though they work with other agencies as well, specifically work to recruit those individuals with disabilities into federal careers. In addition, there are also Schedule A hiring authority opportunities. If you have a disability that can be documented by a medical professional, you can get what is known as a Schedule A letter. That Schedule A letter does not need to disclose the disability, it just needs to be confirmed by a medical professional that you are eligible for Schedule A hiring authority, which allows agencies to prioritize your application. So again, we have more resources on GoGovernment, and we'll be sharing those in the follow-up email, but those are two programs that I want to highlight for you. Another way of accessing federal opportunities is through veterans preference. So if you're a veteran, really nice thing about federal hiring is that they do need to prioritize your application. So they will consider veterans in advance of considering other candidates. There are some documentation, eligibility things that you would need to attach to your application that they will list for you under each job announcement for veterans preference. You can actually stack veterans preference with other hiring authorities. So if you are applicable for Schedule A and veterans preference, you can stack those. Additional resources, again, GoGovernment will be sending that in a follow-up email, but Feds Hire Vets is another really great resource. All right. And then for those who identify as Native American or Indigenous, there is also Indian preference. Now this preferential hiring authority is not applicable government-wide, but specifically to Indian Affairs, Indian Health Service, in both Department of Health and Human Services and Department of the Interior. There are opportunities specifically for those communities in which you would need that form referenced on the screen, so the form BIA 4432, that would be documentation, evidence of your affiliation with a federally recognized tribe. All right, and our final eligibility hiring authority here is going to be non-competitive eligibility. So how many of you have considered or maybe heard of, looked at AmeriCorps, Fulbright, Peace Corps? Do we have any alums of any of those programs? Okay. So if you are not aware of these programs, so Peace Corps is a 27-month volunteer service opportunity where you would be completing your service abroad. And AmeriCorps Vista is up to a year-long opportunity right here in the United States. These service opportunities are a great way to get a sense of that public service experience and also help your job search when it comes to federal hiring. So when you have completed one of these programs and other programs that are also eligible for this, critical language scholarship, Gilman Scholarship, Fulbright programs, allow you to have up to a year of non-competitive hiring eligibility. So again, like other hiring authorities, it gives you that extra boost in your application where they'll consider your application before they consider those that don't have that authority. So again, we have additional resources, and much like that recent graduate category where that timeline's extended for those who are in service, it's a similar thing with non-competitive hiring eligibility. So if you're a veteran and your application is delayed due to service, that timeline can be extended for you. Okay, so we're going to be talking about USAJOBS, more information about navigating, filling out your applications. So I'm going to pass things back over to Logan to talk about job series codes.
I repeat myself a lot. So like I said earlier, narrowing down your search is probably one of the most important things you can do when searching for roles on USAJOBS. And job series codes are another way to do that. Every single career field has job series codes, which is a code that corresponds to a certain type of position in government. And you can use that to your advantage to find, opportunities that align with your major or area of study, a career you wish to pursue, or even if you just want to use these job series codes to explore what's out there, it can be a helpful tool. In the maroon graphic on the screen, you can see that these are some of the job series codes for degrees in communication or in the creative arts field. So there's positions in public affairs, language, audiovisual, so all sorts of things across the media and communications field. And there are codes for all sorts of career fields. But what you can do, for example, is use the job series code 1040, which is a language specialist job series code. You can put that into the search bar on the USAJOBS site, and it'll then populate with different positions that might require language skills or be focused on using language skills. And you can do this, again, with any career across government. And so gogovernment.org is a resource that we have at the Partnership for Public Service for job seekers. And that website has what's called career guides that includes job series codes and careers ranging from technology, business, government, social sciences, anything that you're interested in. There are some corresponding job series codes there. So if you're in the room trying to determine your next steps or want to explore what's out there, this is, again, just another way to help you narrow your search and find what you're looking for. And so here, again, like I said, reviewing your results is the most important thing you can do. What I want to point out here is not only can you review your results, but you can save your searches. So by creating a USAJOBS profile, you can upload and save information there, including saving your job searches. This is helpful because if you put in hours to your job search or put in a lot of time and effort, it's nice to be able to save it, because what you can do is log into your profile and go back to those searches you've saved. So if you're then ready to apply to the job, you can do that. Or if you want to compare positions, you can do that as well. But that's just another tool within the site available to you. So save those job searches because it'll save you time. And last but not least, review the job announcement. I had talked about this earlier, but again, that's where you're going to find what does that position actually do, what would you be doing in your day-to-day work, and you'll also find how you'll be evaluated in the application process. Pay special attention to that, because that'll help you adjust your resume to fit the position and ensure if there's any technical requirements or specifications for that particular role. And then, like I said, you can save your searches, but you can also save applications and also save jobs on the USAJOBS platform. So use that to your advantage. It'll save you time. When saving resumes, you can save up to 5 different federal resumes, which we'll talk about in a few moments. But you can also save jobs. So after you've done your search, you've maybe found an internship or a variety of roles, full-time jobs that interest you. You can save as many as you'd like in USAJOBS. And so then when you're ready to apply, you can quickly access them there. And so here's the USAJOBS website, just sort of what it looks like on the interface. I know a handful of you said you had been on the site before, or at least familiar. But on the right side of the screen, you can see those filters. You can also search by location or use keywords. And so this job seeker here is going through. They're looking at some positions available to students and recent graduates. And as you can see, there's a lot of positions available. So finding ways to narrow down your search, again, is going to be most helpful to you. And here's a position at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And so within this posting here, you see the job summary, who the job is open to. You can see the different locations that are hiring. And that's also important to consider too. Sometimes some agencies will do one posting, but for 10 different locations. So again, reviewing that job announcement's that way you can see, where's that job at, and make sure you're applying to something that makes sense for you. And here you can see that this is an internship posting, but within this internship posting, you can see all the different career fields they're hiring interns for. So keep a special eye on that as well, especially if you're looking for an internship or fellowship type position. Many of them will have one posting, but for up to 10 different career fields. And again, there's that information on how to apply. But we'll go ahead and move on into federal resumes. So we've talked about USAJOBS, how to get there, how to find the jobs you're looking for, and now we've moved into the apply phase. So you're ready to apply to a federal position, but you'll need a federal resume. How many of you have a federal resume? Okay, great. And have you interned with the federal government before or worked with? Yeah, where at?
In the White House.
Oh, awesome. And then did somebody else have a hand up as well? No. Okay. So with the federal resume, the biggest difference than maybe the resume you currently have is that it's going to be 2 to 5 pages. So federal resumes are typically longer than your traditional industry resume. And the reason for that is the federal government wants to know what you did and how you did it. And in many other careers or jobs, fellowships, internships, opportunities, you might be asked to submit a resume and a cover letter and answer essay questions. With most federal jobs, the federal resume is your application, is your cover letter. That is the document hiring managers will be reviewing when determining whether or not you're fit for the job. So it's to your advantage to expand upon some of those bullet points, to really hone in and explain those key skills that you have, to be able to highlight who you are as a candidate, and display that you are qualified for the job. And so the federal resume can be a bit intimidating and take some time to complete. However, if you use the resume builder on the USAJOBS website, again, another perk of the platform, you can use this to your advantage. It can save you time, and it'll do all the formatting for you. So that way you can focus your time and energy on developing the content of your resume, such as, what you did, your key accomplishments. You can spend your time there because the site will format the resume for you. And so here we are again in this timeline. So we talked about how to navigate USAJOBS. Then we've briefly discussed the federal resume. And so, let's just say that's gone well. You formatted your resume. It's 2 to 5 pages. You've gone into detail. And now we move over into the job offer phase. Once you get that job offer, it's an exciting opportunity. But what it does is almost starts a whole nother process. Like I said, federal hiring can take some time and require some patience, but it does lead to a rewarding career. So now we'll spend our time talking about, once you get that job offer, what comes next. So I'll turn it over to Anne to talk more about background checks and security clearances, because many jobs across government require some sort of background check or security clearance component. And so we'll demystify some parts of the process, as well as talk about how you can prepare if you don't already have a clearance.
Thank you. So how many of you are maybe interested in the intel community, Department of State, Department of Defense? Okay, we've got some people here. So for every agency across government, you're going to need a background check. For some agencies, specifically with intel community, Department of Defense, Department of State tend to be really common ones, you will need a security clearance for the work that you would be doing. So we'll get into that a little bit more here. Within the federal government, there are 5 different tier classifications for jobs to be placed in, and that's going to determine the type of background check needed and if there's a security clearance that's going to be required. So for each of these 5 tiers, they fall into 3 different categories in terms of the forms that you're going to need to be filling out. So non-sensitive, public trust, national security positions. So anything with national security position is going to require a security clearance. Those non-sensitive positions are not going to require a security clearance, but you will still need a background check. So that's going to be something to account for in that hiring process, which is part of why it takes, on average, about 100 days to get hired by an agency, not including those more sensitive positions. So for a public trust opportunity, those are going to be slightly more in-depth than a non-secure position, non-sensitive position. However, it's not going to be quite as in-depth as you would see for a job that mandates a security clearance. And these forms are available on USAJOBS, so we'll get into this more in a little bit. But if you want to prepare, if you want to know what's coming next in your job application process, and you know that you might need to be filling out one of these forms, then you can take a look and figure out what information you need to have ready when it's time for that step in the process. And the way that they classify these is based on sensitivity and risk level. And you can see on the screen here, we've got non-sensitive positions, low risk, all the way up to special sensitive, critical sensitive, and high risk. And so that's going to depend on the work that you're doing and how much of a threat that information could pose if it were to be released to the public. So within those national security positions, they fall into a couple different categories. So confidential is going to be your base level security clearance that needs to be re-investigated every 15 years. And as you increase the sensitivity of the information you're working with, you'll get into secret, top secret, and then top secret sensitive compartmented information. And that last one is going to be an additional security clearance you would get on top of a top secret clearance. And that relates to specific areas of work that you would be exposed to. And top secret and then the sensitive compartmented information would need to be reinvestigated every 5 years, whereas the secret clearance would need to be reinvestigated every 10 years. So how to prepare for a background investigation? You want to start gathering the relevant information now. You might not necessarily think that you need to worry about that yet because you're only in the beginning of the process, but it can take some time to get that information together, and it's good to be prepared and know what you're going to have to be sharing with agencies throughout this process. Like I said, these forms are available on USAJOBS if you'd like to take a look at them. The SF5, 85P, and SF86 are all publicly available and accessible to the public, so you can see what you would need to provide. One thing that we always like to tell people is to make sure that you are aware of what can impede your ability to have a background check go successfully and to get a security clearance. One thing I will note is that as laws across the country change in regard to marijuana use, it is still federally illegal, and different agencies may handle that in different ways. It is legal in the state of Connecticut, I believe, so it's something to be aware of if you're interested in working with federal agencies, that is not necessarily something that you would want to be engaging in. So another thing, you want to stay out of debt or diligently repay it. If you have student loans, totally fine, but it is a red flag if you have like large amounts of debt that you're not actively paying back, but again, student loans are a little bit different. They're more looking for risk factors. And again, you want to be completely honest. If there's anything that you're not sure about, you don't know if it might disqualify you, so you're like, oh, maybe I'll hold back, maybe they don't need to know that. I guarantee you, it is better to tell them and have that discussion than to leave it out and have them find out anyway, because that will guarantee that you do not get past your background check, you will not get past your security clearance. So it's very, very important to be honest. It is much more likely that you'll get a security clearance if you're completely honest with them, and you can talk about the circumstances around whatever it is that might be a red flag than it would be if you were to hide that information they were to find out later. So again, it's really important to find all that information, figure out what you would need to disclose, and be completely honest throughout that entire process. So as we move on here, we'll go into how to find those federal opportunities. So we've mentioned USAJOBS, but that's not the only way to find federal jobs. There are several other ways that you can use to navigate your job search. USAJOBS is great when it comes to actively applying, but there are agencies such as the intelligence community that don't post on USAJOBS. They're referred to as accepted service agencies, and they do not have the mandate to post on USAJOBS, so you're going to have to look elsewhere for those positions. A great place to start is intelligencecareers.gov. They're going to have information about all intelligence community agencies and where to start when you are looking for jobs with those agencies. So again, in a similar vein, going directly to agency websites can be incredibly helpful. USAJOBS has information available when there are active applications open, but if they're not actively recruiting and you're trying to plan ahead, the best place to go is directly to the agency's website, because they're going to have the information there that you need to know to find those opportunities. National Park Service is a great example. Every national park across the country has a website where you can learn more about careers, job opportunities that are available, and CIA is another example. They list all of their opportunities directly on their website, so it's a really great resource for information. And this might surprise you, but another great way to find opportunities is through social media. So you can follow agencies on social media. Instagram is a really great example, not only to learn a little bit more about what that agency does, but also they may post about their internship openings, about their job postings. They may release, our internship program is going to be available on USAJOBS next week. They may post that on their stories. They may post that on their main feed. So having that additional source of information can help you as you navigate this job search. One thing I will note, since we were just talking about the intelligence community, while this is great advice for agencies across the board, if you are interested in intelligence communities specifically, we do recommend that you don't follow them, you don't interact with their social media, as that can preclude you from employment, as especially specifically the CIA does not want that association publicly. So another great place to go, I know we just talked about agency websites, social media. Oftentimes agencies will have recruiters, events. USAJOBS has a really great events page. It's relatively new. In addition to job postings and application opportunities, you can also learn more directly from the agencies. You can take part in webinars, information about building your federal resume, interview skills. Agencies are posting new events all the time, so that's a really great resource for you as well. If you're interested in Peace Corps, they have a recruiter program where you can connect to recruiters, learn more about the program. And the State Department has diplomats in residence, and they are really great resources as well for anybody considering opportunities with the State Department and the Foreign Service. So as we round out how we can find these opportunities here, we're really excited to share with you our newest resource on gogovernment.org that's called the Federal Internship Finder. So as I've highlighted previously, it can be difficult to find some of these opportunities as you have to go to a lot of different places, and if it's not actively on USAJOBS, you're not going to find it there. So the Federal Internship Finder was designed to kind of fill that gap. So what it is a database of all of these opportunities that will link you directly to the agency website that's filterable. You can find those opportunities even if they're not currently on USA Jobs. So we've got a short video here on how to use the Finder, what its purpose is. So we'll just take a second. So again, you can filter by category. And these categories, as Logan mentioned, we have a resource called the Career Guides. And the filtered category for career fields is based on those guides. So you can take a look at those guides, figure out which one is most applicable to you and your interests, and use that to then filter these opportunities and directly find information from agencies about opportunities that are going to be the most relevant to you. So the QR code's here, but we'll also follow up with that email. So again, for that federal internship finder, you can filter by these 7 fields, and they'll restrict that search to evergreen information sources directly from agencies, where you'll find information about whether it's full-time or part-time, if it's paid or unpaid. It is an unfortunate reality that there are unpaid internships in government, although most of them do tend to be paid, and we allow you to filter out those unpaid opportunities if you so desire. You can also filter by agency. So if you know a specific couple of agencies that you're interested in working for, you can find that information directly through the Finder. So we touched on the career guides, but we have 15 of them. They range from administration program management to legal opportunities, education, working abroad, security and protection. And all of these career guides will provide you with information related to those job series codes that Logan had mentioned previously, in addition to agencies that are most commonly hiring within these fields. So we've got an example here for business and finance. It'll give you some sample job opportunities, what those descriptions might look like, what the job title might look like. In addition, it's showing you those agencies that are going to most commonly hire in that field. We have this information and much more, so I really encourage you to go check that out. So with that said, gogovernment.org. I know we've thrown that at you probably 100 times by now, but we really intend for this to be kind of your go-to landing page for navigating federal careers and navigating that job application process. So we do have a newsletter. If you'd like to sign up, we won't bombard your inbox. It's just delivered monthly with opportunities and resources for accessing careers in government. But again, we go more in depth in background checks and security clearances, what it's like to work in the federal government, how to build that federal resume. So if you've forgotten anything we've discussed today, you can always go to gogovernment.org and find those resources there. So I'll pass things back over to Logan to talk about our Future Leaders in Public Service internship program.
How many of you are looking for summer opportunities this summer? Anyone? Awesome. So the Future Leaders and Public Service Internship Program is a paid internship program operated by us, the Partnership for Public Service, but the program places students into roles at federal agencies. This is a paid internship program, and for this program, you can be of any major, any field of study. And there's a variety of career tracks available. So what you do when you apply to the program is you select the career track of your interest. There are career tracks in public administration, business and finance, public interest technology. We've had tracks that are geared more toward entrepreneurship or human resources. So no matter like what your interest might be, or even public policy, which is a popular one for many of the students in the program, there's an opportunity to explore a career within that track at a federal agency. And so the program is structured over the summer to complete either in person in Washington, D.C. or remotely. So depending on what delivery you'd like, there's some flexibility there. You can participate in person or from anywhere in the U.S. The program takes place over about 10 to 12 weeks in the summer. And while you go through the program, you receive access to mentorship within the agency, as well as have the opportunity to participate in a series of professional development programming. That professional development programming includes bringing in federal leaders from across government to share stories of their career, networking events where you can connect with peers, as well as folks working all across government. There are career fair components. That way, you're not just getting a perspective of the agency you're placed at, but really an enterprise view of government during your time in the program. And there's also other workshops, too, on how to prepare for federal jobs, whether that's jobs at the White House, jobs in agencies, or jobs even in the legislative branch. The program really touches it all, and it's meant to be a catalyst for folks who are excited about public service and give them a platform to be able to launch their career. For the fall, for summer 2024, applications are due on November 24th, so there's still some time to apply. If you scan the QR code there, it'll take you to the website, but the website of the day is definitely gogovernment.org. You can find the program there and apply there. It's straightforward. One thing that stands out about applying is you do not need a federal resume. Since this program is not provided by a federal agency directly through USAJOBS, you can bypass that and instead submit the resume you have, as well as answer a couple essay questions that really look to ask, what are your goals and interests and what excites you about public service. Once you complete that, I would say it takes about an hour to complete from start to finish, and then you can submit that. And as long as you submit that by November 24th, you'll be eligible for consideration for spring or for summer of 2024. And last but not least, if you have a cybersecurity background, computer engineering background, computer science, anything of that nature, if you're interested in a career launching opportunity, the Cybersecurity Talent Initiative is a fellowship program that places recent graduates into a full-time paid 2-year role at a federal agency. And it's really meant to be a early career developmental program where you receive access, again, to mentorship across the field. You get to build cross-industry perspectives and have a chance to work in a federal agency doing innovative work. Applications for this cycle close on November 8th. However, if you're this is a program we offer annually. So if this is something that does interest you, our application period will open in August again of 2024, but only a few days remaining if you're interested in this cycle, and those applications are due on November 8th. And also you can find this program information on gogovernment.org. And with that, that wraps up our presentation here this morning. And I'd love to turn it over for questions, comments, takeaways for anyone here in the room. We also have an evaluation as well. If you wouldn't mind taking the time to fill out that evaluation, it really helps us in knowing what content is most helpful to you all, or if there's things that we can add as we engage